Hey guys, so my struggle for I honestly I went into it with low expectations. I wasn't really expecting a whole lot. I thought it was going to be worse than it ended up being, in my personal opinion. A lot of people thought Mulder and or Scully were going to die. A lot of people did die, so spoiler alert, bunch of spoilers coming, so if you haven't watched the episode, you might want to click out of this video. Anyways, so the people that supposedly looked like they could have died were Skinner and Reyes. But according to Chris Carter in an interview after the finale, it's kind of up to interpretation. It looks like Skinner has a much better chance of survival than Monica Reyes. It looks like she got a bullet to the head. But still, and Chris Carter is pretty ambiguous about that. He basically said about both of them, for Monica Reyes, no one stopped to check her pulse. We know that she has alien DNA like Scully does. I assume that doesn't really give her the immortality. But from what we understand, from what we've seen about the cigarette smoking man, he has access to alien DNA that apparently makes him regenerate. I mean, we saw him survive a missile to the face, so he has some sort of regenerative properties, and I honestly feel like Cigarette Smoking Man probably is still not dead, despite Mulder shooting him several times at the end. I think he's still alive, probably, which is kind of unfortunate. And that's kind of one of the reasons I don't want season 12, just because we know that Mulder and Scully won't ever have a happy ending, if that's the case. If it does come back, just from what we've seen. And since Scully and Mulder are now expecting a baby, and if Cigarette Smoking Man is still alive, he's not going to allow them any sort of happiness. So honestly, I'm kind of hoping that we don't get a season 12. I know a lot of people want it because they think Scully being pregnant is a huge cliffhanger and that we need to come back and resolve it. My personal opinion, no, I don't think we need to come back to it. Just from what we've already seen of the My Struggle series and season 11 as a whole, there's a lot of things have been retconned, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. A lot of retconning, a lot of inconsistency. And I think that if there is a potential for a season 12, I mean, never mind the fact that Gillian Anderson has already said she's not coming back. But if it does come back, it'll probably just be Mulder. And, I mean, no one really wants the show without Scully, without the two of them. I know they did it once before, and I don't see the point of a revival having that happen. I know because of contracts and whatnot, they had to work out something for season 9, but I just don't see the point of coming back to that. And I know there's a lot of speculation with the St. Rachel Hotel, the episode +1, where Scully and Mulder supposedly conceived their baby. St. Rachel dies in childbirth. If you look up the history behind that, St. Rachel dies in childbirth after her giving birth to her second child. And a lot of people think that if the show comes back, maybe Scully will get killed off in childbirth, and nobody wants to see that. So I think the fan base is, pretty legitimately pissed off already. So yeah, I don't think that would be a good idea either. And speaking of that, me personally, I don't mind the pregnancy plotline. I mean, considering if Skinner and Monica Reyes are really dead, everybody, I mean, Mulder and Scully don't really have anybody. And William, we see that he's immortal, but he wanted Scully. He stops her as Mulder, tells her that he wants her to let him go. So basically, they lost him too. They really don't have anything. but each other and this baby at this point. And I believe Chris Carter mentioned in an interview that that's the interesting emotional way he wanted to bring them back together. I am glad that they're back together and that they're both alive. Honestly, I think if that's what they really want at this point of time in their life, then I think that they should have that. Considering they've lost everything else at this point, I think there's some prospect of happiness. I mean, we see at the end, they're both crying. It's a very emotional moment when William has just at least appears to have died, at least to Mulder. We don't know if Scully can maybe sense, since they're psychically connected through those visions, if she thinks he's alive. If she does, she's not saying anything. And because she's basically saying that William was an experiment, he wanted us to let him go, I wasn't a mother to him. There's a lot of out of character things happening in that scene. And I try to, in my head canon, I try to interpret that a little bit differently. In a few different ways, I think that can be interpreted as a Scully, did a huge 180 from running after William inside that factory to, oh, he was an experiment. I mean, she did a huge 180. So I'm not sure if it's because of Mulder's reaction, she's afraid of because we know that Mulder's had depression and some other issues, that maybe his obsession will spiral out of control, and so she's looking out for Mulder because he's just utterly devastated. That's one way I like to look at it, because Mulder hasn't really been given a chance to really express his feelings regarding all this throughout the whole season, and it's been a lot of Scully just crying and crying and crying over William. So it's kind of nice, on one hand, to see Mulder have a reaction to all this, and see him as a father figure. But at the same time, I don't really agree when he says that, what am I if I'm not a father? Well, Mulder was never really a father to William. I mean, Scully was a mother to William, and she carried him. She took care of him for, I think, almost a year before he was given up for adoption. I could see she obviously has more of the attachment. Maybe she's separating herself in that moment for Mulder's sake. But Mulder's saying, what am I if I'm not a father? I mean, I know Mulder's lost everything, including Scully, up until recently, until this point, because, the breakup thing. He's lost so much. So maybe that's all he really feels that he is at this point, is that, what else am I? The Samantha arc has been closed. Samantha is dead. And then after that, what kind of fueled both of them to continue on was William. And so without that, what is left for Mulder? He feels like he has no purpose in life. And that's kind of how I interpret it. But I don't think that his life would be defined by fatherhood. In my opinion, I think that William is kind of an idea to Mulder, because Mulder was around Scully for a very limited time after he came back from the dead during Scully's pregnancy, and he was only with William for a couple days. He only got to bond with him for a couple days before he left. Any memories that Mulder has of William is very, very limited in comparison to the history that Scully has. So I think for Mulder, William is kind of, he misses him. I think he misses more of the idea of being a father, because he never really had that chance. So that's kind of what I thought was out of character there. And I know a lot of people, and it did kind of seem like Scully just kind of did a 180 there, where she's saying William was an experiment. And honestly, I just attribute that to just bad writing, to be honest. It just wasn't really constructed very well. It just wasn't very well written. And from what we've seen of all of my struggles, none of them are very well written. None of them are consistent. None of them make any sense. And I know a lot of people, and I think Chris Carter said something about watching all of My Struggle episodes consecutively. But honestly, I don't think that's going to make any difference, because none of them really even tie in together. I mean, nothing really makes any sense. Um, and then there's another theory that's going around because at the beginning of this episode, when William is talking about his struggle, he shows how he hatched a store-bought egg into a chick. And I guess a lot of people, because of that scene, which is very different from when William uses his other powers, usually to hurt other people or to kill people, that power is very different. He brought something to life, and so I guess a lot of people, because of that, and because of the visions that William sends Scully of her giving birth and an ultrasound, that maybe because of their psychic connection earlier on in the season, he somehow restored her fertility. There are some parts that don't make any sense to me because if she got pregnant +1, she didn't actually come across William until Ghoulie. So he somehow helped her. If he somehow restored her fertility without them meeting, I guess that's possible. I mean, it is the X-Files. But it's kind of an out there theory, but a lot of people are really like, looking into that. Because, I mean, Scully's pregnant at 54 years old, and she is barren. So, yeah, it is, I mean, to me, it is the X-Files, and I know Chris Carter, he just likes to use alien DNA as an explanation for everything. And for me personally, I honestly think, and I've written fics about this, but I think at the end of I Want to Believe would actually have been a better timeline for the second baby scenario. Technically Scully's third baby, second one that she's carried. I think that at the end of I Want to Believe would have made more sense, to be honest, because her and Mulder living together. Mulder was exonerated by the end of I Want to Believe, and they were in their early and mid 40s, early to late mid 40s, both of them. So then it would actually have made a little bit more sense to have that +1 conversation about more kids and like regrets. I think that the bedside conversation in +1 would have made a little bit more sense than I Want to Believe, because they would be at that age to where, like, if they did want another kid, that's kind of like your last hurrahs. So if they want to try or something like that. So I think honestly that would have made more sense. They probably would have never broken up if they did have a second kid after I Want to Believe. That probably wouldn't have happened. So honestly, I think that would have made more sense timeline-wise, but, here we are. And a lot of people, a lot of people they think the pregnancy is very bizarre, and it is very bizarre, but honestly, I've seen more bizarre things in the X-Files. It is the X-Files. Things are going to be bizarre. And honestly, and as much as I disagree with a lot of Chris Carter's writing and characterization, a pregnant 54-year-old is not something you see on TV, very often. You don't, it's something that's very uncommon in real life, but it's not really something that anyone has really done in television that I know of anyways. So that is kind of, in a way, if you minus the fact that Scully's supposed to be barren, it is something that hasn't been on TV before. So, yeah, so for me personally, I don't mind it. I think it kind of, if it weren't for that, if they thought William was dead, if they just thought that and they're crying in each other's arms, and I would have just been depressed. But at least there's some hope there, that there is some, despite all that's happened, that they will have a happy ending. Yeah, at least there's some hope there, just because they've lost so much else. And I'm going to choose to believe that Skinner and Monica Reyes are alive. Just because of, Monica Reyes' death was just so senseless. I don't understand the point of her death. She came back briefly. We never really understood her motives. I know Annabeth Gish has said at the X Fest that she chooses to believe that that Monica Reyes would do these things to protect Scully and Mulder and William. So that's kind of what I'm going with. Even though it wasn't really made clear by Chris Carter, but we did see she did try to put the car in reverse and try to get the hell out of there. We did see that she tried to lead Scully and Mulder to William, but she was wrong about his location. I guess that was supposed to be the redemption, but William wasn't there, so I don't see how that could really be her redemption. And she was shot in the head by Skinner, of all people. I mean, imagine if Skinner lives and he doesn't really, he knows he shoots Monica. I don't really see any redemption there, to be honest. And I guess that's why Annabeth Gish wrote her own fanfic. Because she wasn't really too happy with what happened with her character either. But anyways, a lot of people are saying that that Scully's reproductive agency has been taken away in regards to the third baby. Well, assuming Chris Carter does not retcon the fact that this third baby is supposed to be Mulder's, I don't think that this third baby would be considered taking away her reproductive rights in this case. And that's just because, she and Mulder, they did have consensual sex. And, rightfully she assumes that she cannot get pregnant, not just because of the age, but because she's supposed to be barren. So they have this miracle baby. So in this particular case, I don't think it's a violation of her reproductive agency. Of course, Emily was, they stole her ova and created Emily. And apparently, Cigarette Smoking Man is William's father. He impregnated Scully, and it's supposedly his biological child. So yes, in those two instances, her reproductive agency was violated. It was taken away. But this third baby, I don't think so. Unless Chris Carter could retcon it, which is why I hope we don't have a season 12, because we already know how Chris Carter handles baby storylines. So for this third particular child, I don't mind it for that reason. But I think that the William storyline, and William being Cigarette Smoking Man's son, I just think it was unnecessary. The rapey aspect of that, I just don't think it needed to be done. That's kind of one of the biggest beef I have with the revival, is retconning the fact that William is supposed to be Mulder and Scully's son. Yeah, so that's kind of BS, but I really hated the breakup the most of all, along with the retcon of the mythology. But I'm kind of over the breakup now, just because they they appear to be back together. So I'm kind of over that. But I know a lot of fans are rightfully upset about the William storyline, because you can't go back and look at Existence the Same. It's just kind of weird and disgusting. So yeah, so it's that's understandable. I just don't think they needed to do that. Why do it at this point for a revival? I just didn't think that was necessary. And Scully was never really able to react to Skinner's revelation. We didn't really see her get to react to that. I thought that was very bizarre. At the time, the first time that I watched it, like, what the hell? We didn't get to hear like what he said, and she just seemed so nonchalant about it. Kind of like when it kind of fades out to like you hear her like kind of breathing heavy. I assume that maybe she's trying to tune it out. Maybe she's in shock, and that's maybe why we heard her say what she did at the dock to Mulder. Maybe it's kind of coming out. Maybe she's sort of realizing. But yeah, a lot of things were inconsistent about this episode. It was just kind of fast paced, but considering, it could have been a lot worse, I think. At least that, we can attribute that at least they're together. There's prospects for a happy future. And I'm just afraid that if we get a season 12, that they're going to bring Cigarette Smoking Man back. And it's just like, because does Chris Carter have any other ideas? It just seems like he's out of ideas, and he just keeps bringing Cigarette Smoking Man back. And it's just like, why? It's boring. This guy can't be killed. Why? It's just kind of an old, tired plot. at this point. And Mulder and Scully at this point, I think they deserve to be happy. They're both close to retirement age. And I don't see how they could continue a season 12 with a baby. I don't think that they would do that again. I mean, there's no point. I mean, pretty much what they came back to and the revival to find William, I mean, that's pretty much done now. I mean, there's no point in them really being FBI agents anymore. And from what we saw, I mean, their lives are dangerous. I mean, their baby would be in danger all the time. So I don't think that they would continue, to be honest. And the X-Files is also, at this point, shut down. So take from this finale that they're going to go and build a life together. And that's kind of what I'm happy about. I mean, the deaths were kind of senseless. And I honestly, I like as many problems as there was with this finale. I really hated the season 10 finale. I mean, Mulder was left half dead on a bridge, and basically it just seemed like the episode just kind of ended like in the middle of the episode or something. Glad for that, because that was just kind of a big FU to the fans. The way the last season ended, especially when we didn't know if we're going to get any more at the time, because we didn't know. But I think season 11 at that time was a lot more promising than season 12 is now. I kind of think that they've alluded to the fact this whole entire season that that this season is probably most likely going to be the end of the X-Files as we know it. And honestly, I'd rather see a spinoff. I'd rather the X-Files end knowing that Mulder and Scully go off to lead some sort of form of a happy life. Because I just think that they deserve it. I mean, they're in their early mid-50s now, you know, so I'd rather not come back and, like, you know, maybe if Gillian Anderson doesn't come back, you know, if David Duchovny comes back and it was renewed for a season 12, and, you know, who knows? I mean, if they may have Scully die in childbirth or something, and nobody wants that. I mean, let's just like have it end here while we can salvage it. I mean, it's a lot of the fandom's pretty pissed off. So I mean, that's kind of what I feel about this finale. I mean, definitely could have been a lot better. I mean, I tried to think of it, you know, as this could be their happy ending, even though a lot of people think that Scully just kind of discarded William in the trash, and it did kind of seem that way when she was saying those things. And I think that Scully kind of revealed the pregnancy thing to Mulder because of what he said pretty much forced her to tell him that, well, you are a father, you know. And I think had those two scenes, the William thing and the baby thing, had some breathing room, it probably would have been received a little bit better. Yeah, it's just the way it was done just wasn't really well constructed. But it is what it is. So that's kind of my feeling on the episode. I may review some of the other episodes. I meant to do so and just got busy. That's kind of my thoughts on the last episode. And if you guys like this video, please be sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.